Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could stand for a moment of silence and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, could we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Jamie Girardi.
Here.
Mr. Don Anderson. Mr. Peter Hansel.
Here.
Mr. Jonathan Moody.
Here.
Mr. Christopher Poole.
Here.
Mr. Richard Tonello.
Here.
Chairman Charles Gray.
I'm here. And proof of publication?
The items were published in the Tampa Bay Times on April 20th, 2022, June 22nd, 2022, July 6th, 2022, and July 20th, 2022.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
Motion to approve the minutes from the Planning Commission workshop on June 16th and from the Planning Commission meetings on June 16th and July 7th.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted, and we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. All right, thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody today. We're the Planning Commission, and we're appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and we meet twice monthly. We serve as a local planning agency, and we hold public hearings and transmit to the Board of County Commissioners recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments and development code amendments, rezonings, and conditional use requests. Planning Commission is the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests, and certain alternative standard requests. However, final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. Anyone is in opposition to any comprehensive land amendment, land development code amendment, rezoning, conditional use, or any item where the Planning Commission transmits a recommendation to the County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend the appropriate County Commission meeting. Those of you who are not familiar with the format of our meetings, we have three sections. We have continuances, consent, and regular items. We'll go through the continuances first, and then we'll go through the consent agenda. As if there's anything on consent that you'd like to have heard today, we'll raise your hand and we'll have it pulled for discussion. If not, once we go through continuances, we'll vote on them all at one time and approve the ones that are left on continuance. Any that are removed from consent will go to regular items, and those items will all be discussed today by the applicant and anybody that has any questions about it from the public. Applicants will have 3 minutes to make their presentations, and concerned citizens will have 3 minutes to voice their concerns. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to respond. I don't think there's been any requests for additional time, at least I haven't seen any. Denise, have you
That's
seen
correct,
any?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Denise. All right. So anyway, this is a good time for me to remind you that if you have a phone, which probably most of you do, please put it in a silent position so we don't disturb anybody that's going to speak or somebody that wants to hear. And before we start the regular meeting, we open the meeting for public comment. If there's anybody here who wishes to speak on a topic not on today's agenda, this would be your opportunity to come speak. And if we can help you, we'd be more than happy to do that. If not, maybe we can direct you to who can help you. So is there anyone here that would like to speak? Something that's not on the agenda? Okay. So for those of you who plan to speak today or give testimony, if you'll please stand and raise your right hand and be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, so help you God?
I do. Okay, Denise, do you want to?
Mr. Chair, before Denise speaks, I think you mentioned that you might want to move some items from regular to consent.
Yeah.
So if that's the will of the planning commission, you probably should bring those up now.
Okay, good. So item P7 and item, the walk-on P10, those are the two items that I'd like to put on consent. As far as we know, we haven't had any objections to those items, so.
If we could get that in the form of a motion from somebody
Yeah.
to move into the consent agenda. And then you can still ask for public comment once they're on the
Yeah.
consent agenda, but
Just for clarification, item P10, is that the VOPH item?
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it's shown as a different item on the actual agenda online. Hidden Creek Boulevard, is that VOPH, is that the same thing? Okay,
It
I'm
is,
sorry.
but part of the confusion was that the subject line of that changed
Okay,
from the time it was on the agenda to what
Gotcha.
was emailed to you.
okay.
But yes, that is the VOPH item.
Okay.
So I think if the planning commission's okay moving those two items to consent, you should probably do that in the form of a motion.
So
Okay.
moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign? Okay, and as with all the items on consent, as we go through them, if somebody would like an opportunity to speak, just raise your hand and we'll pull it. Okay? So Denise or Terry, whoever wants to go first?
Sure. So item PC4.
Chair, I apologize. Terry and I may be doing a little bit of tag teaming, if that's okay with you, Terry.
Yes. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, he's good with that. Yeah.
So item PC4 is a zoning amendment in the name of Hale Collier MPUD Master Plan Unit Development by Julia Herndon, Walter and Elizabeth Franzel, the Franzel Family Revocable Trust. It's a rezoning request from AR Agricultural Residential and R1 Rural Density Residential Zoning Districts to an MPUD to allow for a maximum of 109 single-family detached dwelling units and associated infrastructure on approximately 46.1 acres. This item is up for continuance.
All right, is the applicant present? Is there anyone here to speak on this? Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, on this item, there are several ex parte communications that have been submitted to the clerk's office. Those include ex parte communications with John Moody, Chris Poole, Chuck Gray, and those have been submitted to the clerk's office through email, and they will also be attached to the item when it finally comes through the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. And also, if I may, the request for continuance is to the September 1st, 2022 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I also had an ex parte form that my understanding was it was submitted this morning, so it just may not have gotten to Denise yet. So I just wanted to disclose that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll add that to the collection. And I think we still need a motion to continue.
Move to continue item PC4 to September 1st, 2022.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, that motion carries.
Item 5 is a special exception, Masitisa LLC, Spring Hill Outdoor Storage, special exception for freestanding recreational vehicle boat storage in an I-1 Light Industrial Park District, northwest Pasco County, south side of County Line Road, approximately 1.5 miles west of Suncoast Parkway, on approximately 19.4 acres. This item is coming as a continuance to the August 18, 2022 Planning Commission meeting in Newport Richey.
All right. Is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? I don't see anyone. We have a motion to continue.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay.
Item PC6 is a zoning amendment in the name of 54 Crossings MPUD Master Plan Unit Development by Colwell Avenue Properties 4 LLC, a substantial MPUD modification request to add an additional allowed use of a technical trade nursing school utilizing a maximum of 60,000 square feet of existing office entitlements on approximately 22.16 acres. This item comes with a recommendation of approval with conditions.
All right, this is a consent item. Is the applicant present? Anyone here to object?
Just to be clear, Denise or Terry, whoever's handling this, is there anybody that's registered on WebEx for any of these items? I'll just ask the questions now.
For the record, there's no one that is registered on WebEx for any of these items.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, having seen nobody to object, we'll move on to the next item of consent.
Thank you. Item P7 is a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment in the name of CPAS 2212 Crella Estates. It's a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment to the future land use maps, map 2-15 and sheet 5, from Res 1 residential 1 dwelling unit per gross acre to Res 9 residential 9 dwelling units per gross acre on approximately 19.23 acres of real property located on the north side of Shady Hills Road and south side of the intersection of Crella Drive. This comes with a recommendation to find it consistent with the comprehensive plan and approve. And this is an item as the LPA, local planning agency.
Okay. So this is a consent item as well. Is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? See no objections? Next.
And then the leave item P10, WP10, is the last item on the consent agenda. It is a large-scale county comprehensive plan amendment in the name of CPAL 2211 Hidden Creek Boulevard Intermediate Roadway. Large-scale comprehensive plan amendment.
So Terry, that's actually not the name of the item. The item has changed. But
What's the current name?
oh, are you talking about PC9?
no, I'm talking about P10.
Yeah.
C9's on consent too, isn't it?
Well, we can get to P9 in a second, but I realize you're reading from the agenda, Terry, but the agenda memo has a different name for this item.
Oh.
I can read the item if you'd like.
Okay, thank you, Denise.
Sure, you're very welcome. The item is, and this is WP10. The item is PDD 220370. It's a comprehensive plan amendment, CPAL 2211, Villages of Pasadena Hills roadway adjustments. It's a comprehensive plan amendment to the Villages of Pasadena Hills Comprehensive Plan Goal FLU 6, J. Ben Harrell, Villages of Pasadena Hills, to make roadway changes in figures PH2, PH4, PH4A, PH8, PH12, and PH13, amending Transportation Map 7-36 Highway Vision Map, and other amendments as necessary for internal consistency, providing for severability and an effective date. On this item, we're asking that you find the proposed modifications sitting as the LPA, consistent with the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan, and recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners.
In addition,
You take action, let her finish handing it out, so at least you know what you're taking action on.
in addition, an update
Thank
was
you.
made to the information that was delivered earlier.
It was a walk-on. but
Came in a little late.
I think this was emailed to you as well, I believe.
Yeah, correct.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
And you asked for public comment on that one, I forgot.
Yeah. Is the applicant present?
The applicant, I believe, is the county.
Yeah. So anyone here to speak on this topic? Okay.
Somebody raised their hand over there.
Oh, they did? Yes, sir? You'd like to speak? Okay, we have almost a unanimous vote on that.
Aye.
All right. right.
Chuck.
Okay, so can you hear me now? I can hear you now. Okay.
Mr. Chair, in an abundance of caution, I would ask again for the 3 consent items, not the continuance items, but the 3 consent items, whether anybody's here to object to item PC6, PC7,
Okay.
or P10. We haven't talked about P9 yet, but I want to, because Denise, aren't you pulling P9 from consent? Or,
It may be, we'll just have to call it. I just also want to say that PC8 is also on consent.
well, PC8 I know needs some discussion,
Okay.
so.
Okay. So to reverse ourselves for a minute, since you might not have heard, do we have anyone who intended to speak on P6, P7, or P10? I don't see anyone.
Okay, I
Does
think
anyone?
in abundance of caution, let's take action on those 3 first,
Okay.
and then we can revisit P9 and P8.
P8, okay. All right, so I'd like to hear a motion to approve consent items that we discussed,
So moved.
and those were 7,
PC6, P7, and WP10.
right.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign? Okay,
Okay.
that goes down.
So Denise and Carrie, do you want to talk about 8 or 9 first?
I think we could do 9 first.
Okay.
9?
There are speakers who have signed up for PC9.
Pardon me?
There are speakers who have signed up for PC9.
Okay, so it sounds like you need to pull PC9 from consent.
Okay. Consider it pulled.
Okay, so PC8, I think Denise is right, it probably could have been on consent, although it's not, I don't think it's showing as consent. But I think there's a correction that needs to be discussed quickly.
All right, let's do that first then. Denise, you want to go ahead with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to do a presentation on it, or do you want to just discuss the correction that needs to be done?
I think probably can just discuss the correction.
Okay, so I'll read the not the title, but I'll read the concept of it into record, because you're sitting as a local planning agency on this matter. So this is PDD 220369. This is some modifications to the Jabin Harrell Villages of Pasadena Hills Stewardship District, which include revisions to text, tables, and exhibits. This item was presented to the Pasadena Hills Planning and Policy Committee meeting on 7/27 of 2022. And on this item, we're asking you to find it consistent with the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan, and if you'd recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. And it looks like Joel too might be there to talk about the corrections that need to be made.
All right, all right. Mr. Tu, would you like to comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, very briefly, Joel Tu for the record, Tu and Associates. I represent VOPH Master Development Company, which is a new stakeholder in VOPH that actually is funding the consultant work for these VOPH updates. But technically, as David said, this is technically a county application. It was just brought to my attention prior to the hearing, and I apologize, but the transportation consultant for VOPH, Mr. Atefi, says that section 602.10, which is the VOPH transportation analysis description, we're proposing a modification with that new item 4 that has to do with the VC ratio, the volume to capacity ratio for intersections.
Right.
And although we had reviewed this with the technical county transportation staff, Ali informs me that he thinks our terminology, and I'll take one for the team because I drafted this after I got off the call with Amir, Asin, and Ali. But he says that the transportation technical team need to work on that exact wording. The concept is not in dispute, that we're going to increase the VC ratio to 1.2 as long as we're prepared to do traffic monitoring. for that specific location. And this is entirely consistent with what's done in the connected city, for example. So it's nothing new or different. But because Asin and Amir were not available at this late notice, our request is if you would see fit to recommend the LDC changes forward with the simple caveat that the transportation team will get together, provide Mr. Goldstein and I whatever the modified language for that description is, and we will get that done before it gets to the first reading at BCC. It's a technical item that most of us don't understand anyway, so with your permission, we'll just defer that to the technical team at the county.
I saw you look directly at me when you said that, but I don't know.
I meant to look at the engineers, because unfortunately, we have a couple of them that they do understand this, so. So that's the request. Otherwise, we don't really have anything to present on the land development code changes. But again, county staff initiated, and the stakeholders and VOP are in agreement with these changes. So, and sorry for the confusion at the last minute on that terminology.
But it's that the intersection that exceeds or meets or exceeds 1.2 will be monitored, so if there's a problem in the future, it can be addressed.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the only way we get to use that higher ratio in the analysis is if we add a condition to the approval that commits to that traffic monitoring.
Understood.
So it's addressed before there's a problem. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission members, Denise Hernandez. So myself and Gavin Covey, who's the project manager, we will work closely with the transportation folks to make sure that the language is appropriate and show that language to Joel 2 and his team.
All right, very good. Is there anyone else here that needs to speak to this? Okay. If not, I'd like to hear a motion to approve it subject to that modification of the language, please.
I'll move to approve addendum item A, PC8, with the condition that the staff and the petitioners work to modify the language to accurately represent what they are trying to portray.
Second.
Okay, we have 2 seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries. All right, I think we're on PC9. That was originally on consent. But we'll come back to it.
PC9 is a zoning amendment in the name of Denton Place MPD Master Plan Unit Development. And I believe the staff planner is online to provide that presentation.
All right, thank you.
Tammy?
Is that Amy? Is that
Tammy.
Tammy Snyder.
Oh, Tammy, okay. Yes. Hey, Tammy.
Hi,
You
sorry.
can hear me? Go right ahead.
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome.
Everybody can hear her? Hello, everybody can hear her, all right? All right.
Awesome. I can't
Thank
see the PowerPoint. Could you put that up for me, please? All right. So we need to find mine. Awesome.
Okay, good.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, we have the Denton Place MPUD, PDD 227582. Next slide, please. Here's our location map. The roadway along the northern boundary is Houston Avenue. The southern boundary is Denton Avenue, and over there on the west is US 19, just kind of off the picture. Next slide, please. The zoning district surrounding. Next slide, please. And here we have the future land use. The future land use of the parcel is Res 3, and they are not proposing any higher density than Res 3. Next slide, please. Proposed is a rezoning request from an AC agricultural zoning district to an MPUD, Master Planned Unit Development District, to allow the development of a maximum of 804 residential dwelling units, detached, attached, and/or multifamily courtyard homes which are built to rent, and associated infrastructure on approximately 306.7 acres. Next slide, please. The applicant is also requesting the following variations from the LDC, LDC 901.6.D.10, street design and dedication cul-de-sacs. The request is to eliminate the cul-de-sac requirement when street stubs are less than 150 feet. All dead-end streets in excess of 150 feet will have a cul-de-sac in accordance with the Pasco LDC, unless it is to be a futures to another property. Sorry about that, I'm having technical difficulties. I muted. All right, LDC section 901.6.D.11, street design and dedication requirements, design and construction, continuation of existing street pattern, access to adjoining properties. This section requires that streets within the proposed development to be connected to adjacent streets to provide for proper traffic circulation. And Ovo Street is a private street, so this project will not have access to it unless approved by the Responsible Homeowners Association, and even then it is proposed to be an emergency only access. Next slide, please. And LDC section 901.4, substandard roadway analysis. The county access and transportation staff had requested a potential stabilized connection to Eden Road, which is a substandard roadway with large rural residential lots. The applicant agreed to set this potential connection, although the access is not necessary for the project, given the number and locations of other proposed accesses. But they were going to go ahead and supply this as long as the county waived the substandard road requirements for them. Next slide, please. And here's their master plan. You can see that they do have an internal collector, a subdivision collector that's going to be going from north to south. Next slide, please. The proposed development is in the North Market area. It's on the north side of and abutting Denton Avenue and on the south side of and abutting Houston Avenue, approximately 2,600 feet east of Little Road. And currently the parcel reflects its original zoning district of AC and has been used for agricultural pursuits. No increase in density from the existing Res 3 future land use. The property abuts the conceptually planned Denton Avenue Trail to connect US 19 to the Suncoast Parkway. And the 46.84 plus or minus acre Category 1 wetland in the northwest to the middle of the site will remain as a conservation area and will not have residential areas encroaching into the conservation area or the required buffer area. Next slide, please. And LDC section 402.2.C.8 specifies that variations from the code may be reviewed and approved by the PC and BCC during the public hearings held for the MPUD zoning amendment, and they shall be allowed where the BCC specifically finds that the proposed variations do meet or exceed the intent of the code, and staff has reviewed the requested variations and find that they do meet the intent. The proposed request is consistent. Whoop, that's a leftover from another one. Doesn't have a CFA on this one. But it is consistent with the Pasco LDC Chapter 400, subsection 402.2 zoning amendment, and with the applicable provisions of the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan. Next slide, please. And with that, PDD recommends approval with conditions to the BCC.
And Tammy, is this the one where you sent the planning commission some revised conditions?
Yes.
Yes.
So we just need to make sure that if you approve this item, that you're approving it with the revised conditions that were emailed to you on the 3rd.
There have been several ex parte communications. As far as I can tell, it's with every single planning commission member. And those have been sent to the clerk's office.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hobby?
Mr. Chairman, Clark Hobby, Hobby and Hobby PA, 109 North Brush Street, Tampa, Florida. Been sworn here on behalf of the applicant. Subject property is owned by the Harvey family, owned it for many years, and the contract purchaser is a national home builder, D.R. Horton. The site, if we could maybe bring the master plan back up, that would be helpful. Site's located in the Hudson area, and it's somewhat unique in that it has access to two different collector roads. On the north side, we have Houston Avenue, and on the south, we have Denton Avenue. And the proposal here is to stick within the existing future land use classification, and we will build a collector road on the site that will connect to each of the adjacent collector roads that are running east-west through this area. The site is interesting in the fact that it's a mishmash of different uses. You all are familiar with Hudson, no doubt, and know that there's a legacy of some heavy and lighter industrial projects that have been located adjacent to residential and many times, and the county has large facilities in the area as well. In this case, the majority of our boundary on the east side is the county spray field and their reclaimed and wastewater system that runs on several hundred acres that are adjacent to the east. On the south side, there's a large RV resort called Three Lakes that has about 300 some odd RV spaces. To our north, we have the Lake Marinette community, which is really it's a manufactured housing community. I think we may have a few of our neighbors here to speak about that. I did want to update you all. You have revised conditions that you were provided last night from staff. In the last week or so, we've spoken with our neighbors a good bit, and in particular, the neighbors to the north in the Lake Marinette community asked for some special fencing and landscaping, and we're providing that and added a condition that's part of number 8 that adds that for the sections where we will be adjacent to their residential community with any of our houses. Similarly, in the southeast corner, that's a legacy, older, unplatted community that has dirt roads, but one of our neighbors called and asked for some commitment to fencing and landscaping there, and we agreed to do that for them as well. And then, as you heard from staff, with regard to Lake Marinette, we didn't realize until fairly recently, and I don't think staff realized, that their roads were private. So we agreed to show that only as an emergency access, and we're recognizing that we cannot access their roads without their consent because they've been maintaining those on-site roads for many years. Other than that, in the big picture, you know, the Hudson community has been in need of reinvestment and investment for many years. Many of us who've been here a long time have prayed and prayed that we could get large companies to make big investments in the area. And this is a big commitment from a big company that I believe will ultimately rise the value of all the property in the area and will represent a large investment there. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and I really would prefer just to hold the balance of my time and listen to where our neighbors' concerns are, and then I can address those, unless you all have questions now.
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
So Clark, you mentioned about fencing and landscaping. I'm looking at the condition that Tammy sent to the Planning Commission. It talks about a 6-foot tall opaque fence. I'm not seeing anything about landscaping. So if that was your intent, it doesn't appear to be
I'm gonna have Mr. Surak, Brian Surak, and he can answer that with greater specificity.
Good afternoon, Brian Surak. I'm here with Clearview Land Design on behalf of the developer. So there is a required buffer by code along the eastern boundary. It's a type A buffer, which requires some shrubs and trees. So the only component that isn't required in the code would be the opaque fence. So we would be adding
So
the
the
fence in
landscaping you're
addition to.
providing is basically code related, required landscaping.
And then we add the fence.
Okay. All right. I was confused because you said additional landscaping, so
Yeah.
I would.
My bad. I didn't realize, honestly, I thought that our landscaping might have varied from the code a little bit too. I knew we were doing some, but the fence was the main thing our neighbors wanted.
Okay, thank you.
They specifically asked for this type of fencing, so that's how we landed there. Otherwise, I'll answer any questions they may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so is there anybody here to speak on this subject? Anybody here to speak on this? Okay.
Almond, just like the nut. Mr. Chairman, I disagree with the gentleman that just spoke.
Excuse me, we need your full name and address.
Pastor Thomas Almond, and I live on Meridian Boulevard, which is going to be off of Houston by 2 lots. Mr. Chairman, I do disagree with the last gentleman. We live in a rural area, and we have not prayed, nor have we asked for industrial or this type of development. With that being said, I first want to find out here, we are having a hearing here on the east side of the county for a west side issue, which I don't understand, and some of my neighbors are here that traveled some distance. I'm not quite sure if the jurisdiction was changed because of maybe people can't get over here to Dade City. With that being said, I have a few questions and one more comment. According to the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, we are 5 years ahead of ourselves in housing. Why are we even considering more housing industrial, more housing and not more industrial? With that being said, I do have a few questions, and it's about 4 questions deep. I understand there's another development that's not according to this hearing that's going to be 1,600 homes adjacent to Denton going to Kitten Trail. And they're all rural roads, 2-lane substandard roads. What are we going to do about the traffic pattern? We have 2-lane roads here. You know, if you have 800 homes, everybody has 2 cars, you're looking at 1,600 more cars. If you look at the other community, it's going to be 1,600 homes, 3,200 more cars. What are we doing about that? Me and my wife have been here for 22 years, and we worry about the wildlife. We're already seeing foxes and coyotes coming on our 5 acres. The other one is, how do you plan on taking care of the water? We've heard Spring Hill sucking the water out of the ground, created sinkholes, and also they'll probably be connecting to county water. We have well and septic. How do we handle that? And then we look at the other things. Livestock, we have livestock. We have all kinds of animals, roosters. Is that going to bother the new community? And we have electrical and public safety. What are we doing on public safety? Fire, police, hurricane evacuation. So there's a lot of concerns here. So I do object to this, and I think some of my neighbors, if they raise their hands, object also to this man saying, you know, we've been praying for this. We have not. It's a big concern for us because we're in the rural area.
All right,
Mr. Chairman,
we'll
thank you.
get some answers for you. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Please come forward and give us your name and address, please. Don't hang yourself on that thing.
Richard Somerville, 16205 Larson Lane, Hudson. I like to look at the really big picture. Mr. Hobby talked about the big picture, but I look at like worldwide issues. I'm interested in that. In 2014, Naomi Klein's book, This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus the Climate, was published. Chapter 5, she describes what some, quote, political scientists call extractivism, unquote. She defined extractivism as, quote, a non-reciprocal, dominance-based relationship with the earth, one purely of taking. It is the opposite of stewardship, which involves taking, but also taking care that regeneration and future life continue. That's on page 169. At first, I thought of extractivism as only removing resources from inside the earth, as she talks about in the book. But then I realized that extractivism can also describe what is happening in many places here in Pasco County. That is, the extraction from existence, more or less permanently, of vast swaths of forest or agricultural land with little concern for the life that is being destroyed. A case in point is Denton Place. In the map from the agenda, all the uplands within this project are shown for housing. I don't see any stewardship here, at least for upland species. Naomi Klein also goes briefly into the history of extractivism. She says the patron saint of extractivism should probably be Francis Bacon. He is best known for perfecting the scientific method. She says that he, more than anyone else, convinced the British elites to, quote, abandon once and for all pagan notions of the earth as a life-giving mother figure to whom we owe respect and reverence. That's page 170. This was in the early 1600s. From then on, science and technology advanced, so did our ability to pollute and reshape the earth and use and abuse not only nature, but also native peoples in other places. Clearly, we should learn from science and not ignore inconvenient science, but something else is missing in our decision making. That something else is philosophy. I have an ending quote here. This is, quote, there will be no end to the troubles of states or humanity or of humanity itself till philosophers become kings in this world, or till those we now call kings and rulers really and truly become philosophers, and political power and philosophy thus come into the same hands. That's from Plato, from brainyquote.com. Please deny the zoning change. Please get advice from philosophers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I don't see anyone.
You have one more over here to the right.
Oh.
One more.
So we can have your name and address, sir?
Well, I couldn't hear very well, but I live on the corner there on Denton Avenue, and I'm just wondering, are they going to widen the road there or no?
Can I get you to give us your name and address, please?
Name and address.
Name and address.
Oh, name and address, Jeffrey Miller, 16009 Tomahawk Street.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, sir. Anyhow, I live right there on the corner on Denton Avenue, so I'm wondering, are they going to widen the road or not road, or what are they going to do there?
You're in Indian Oaks Hills?
Huh?
You're in Indian Oaks.
I can hear him.
I said you're in Indian Oaks. That's where you live?
Indian Oaks, yes.
At the corner of Denton, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
can anybody just give me any information on widening the road, or you want to speak to that, Mr. Hobby, when you come up? Okay. He'll answer that question for you.
So are they going to widen it or no?
When he comes back up, he's going to answer that for you.
Okay.
It's not a
well,
yes
I hope
or no,
not,
sir,
because I lived there for.
It's not a yes or no answer, because they're making some improvements to the road it's not a black and white answer, so let Mr. Hobby address it.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Hear that
I'm having
okay?
a hard time hearing, so I mean,
That's
my
okay.
son got it, I think.
We can speak up,
Okay.
all right?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll try to get you an answer. All right, Mr. Hobby, you're gonna have to speak up so he can hear you.
I'll speak up now, and I appreciate it where he's coming from because I think I'm headed to that same place.
Yeah, I know.
Again, it's Clark Hobby for the record. To answer, I think it was Mr. Miller's question, the road itself is not going to be widened beyond 2 lanes, but we are constructing turn lanes, both a westbound left turn lane into the site and, an eastbound left turn into the site and a westbound right turn lane. And the access point aligns with Smooth Water Drive, which is the name of the road on the south that comes out of the large RV park. So it's aligned there. So I think that answers that question. As to the first speaker, just as you all know, this is not in one of the county's enumerated rural areas, and there is one in Hudson. This is not in one of them. The future land use on our site is Res 3. The majority of the area to the north and to the west of us is Res 6. Those are deemed to be suburban or teetering on urban level densities, and we're actually adjacent to public, semi-public for the counties, what that's usually used for a more intense public facility as we have next door. So again, this is not, and nor has it been, to my knowledge, ever since the comp plan was adopted. This specific area was not planned to be rural. It has never been. The 2 collector roads, which are adjacent to the site, are not substandard and were found to be standard as part of the timing and phasing analysis. As I mentioned, we are building east and west bound turn lanes on both of the sites, even though hypothetically on Houston, the road pretty much stops close to our eastern boundary, but we're going to go ahead and put the westbound left turn lane in case the road is ever constructed and goes on and makes another connection. You all know that we have to follow the rules on wildlife. There's state, federal, and local rules about wildlife that we have to follow. Any impacts are go through a significant process at all 3 of those levels, and we will have to follow those. We're not proposing to use wells. We'll be linking into the county's water system, so we won't have any effect scientifically on the well systems that our neighbors may have. As you know, our potable system is not just based in Pasco County, but is part of the larger distribution network for Tampa Bay Water. As to livestock, I've seen our livestock coexist in areas that we have significant development. I think about all the stuff on 54, and we still have cows out on the Mitchell's property right now, and we have literally tens of thousands of units surrounding them, and they get along just fine. So I don't view that as being a major thing. And the last thing I'd say with regard to the second speaker, I respect he seems like a very, very intelligent man, but I have to follow the comp plan and the land development code when we take on these rezonings. Play-Doh doesn't really govern how I approach these matters. So I appreciate it. Happy to answer any other questions you may have.
All right.
Clark,
Yes, sir.
I have a concern, and this goes to Pastor Allman's mention. There's another development just to the east of here that will connect between Denton and Kit.
Right.
And I'm looking at your traffic study, and I see that the directional distribution along Denton was assumed to be 20% of traffic. And there's no consideration in this study that there will be a north-south road that will connect Denton to Kitten. And I know that in the other case that we're going to hear in a few weeks, that there's a significant contingent of neighbors that are concerned about the effects of that development on Kitten.
Right.
That particular development is going to have, I'm not going to call it, it's a substantial amount of retail and industrial flex space that's going to go on that development. And right now, if you live up here, the nearest grocery store to you is either the Walmart down at 52 and 19, or there's a Publix at Little and Hudson. It's quite a distance away.
Right.
Well, 80,000 square feet of retail. It's about 40,000 square foot for a grocery store, and I think that's probably likely because it's a long way for these residents. So I think this project may have some impacts to the east that haven't been considered. I also looked at the traffic study for that particular development, and I see that it has not considered your development. Now, I'm not saying that you've done anything wrong.
No.
I looked at the date when this traffic study was submitted, and this was back in November or January.
Right.
And the comprehensive plan amendment that was passed for the other project happened.
Yeah, it hadn't
was
even-
heard by this body in February.
Yeah, it hadn't even
and then
occurred yet.
By the Board of Commissioners in April, so I'm not sure. So maybe the question's better asked to the staff. How do we make sure that when two developments of this size and scale are located that close to each other, that there's some accounting for that in the traffic analysis that's done for these projects? What I want to make sure is, and I'm not opposed to this development at all, and I think it's great you haven't asked for an increase of density.
Right.
But my concern lies in that there's an intersection that's going to be created to the east of you, not far from here, that could potentially have traffic problems, and I think that needs to be evaluated.
Well, I think that's, I have Ali Atefi here, and you all know Ali was with the county for many years, and he can answer some specifics. But generally, my understanding in the last 10 years or so, and maybe since we went away from concurrency, generally what we do is we go out and we take traffic counts, and then we apply a generalized growth factor to the roadway network that we're studying.
And I saw that.
And
It's
so-
in your background traffic
That's right.
statement, but that's, so you do counts, but that doesn't include traffic from 1,600 homes that make it built.
That's right. We typically would not, under the post-concurrency era, we would not go back and then refactor in additional background traffic from other projects that may be coming down the line. Prior to the elimination of concurrency, we did that a lot, and David knows that was a big source of consternation both for staff and for us. I will have Ali talk about this specific project, but what I did understand from speaking with Steve Henry and Ali's office is that the two collector roads that we're impacting have a significant amount of excess capacity, and I suspect that even with this project and the other project that were to be approved, they will still be able to meet the level of service.
And that may be.
Right.
I think what I'm asking, and I don't know what the mechanism to do this is, but I think that needs to be looked at to make sure that isn't going to be a problem. Maybe it's something that maybe it's signalization that may be required to the east of you, but I think there's going to be more than 20% of the project traffic out to Denton that goes there. You're going to now create a shortcut through the other property, and that shortcut's not considered in this traffic study. And likewise, I know in their traffic study, they haven't considered all the people that will move into this development that may shortcut through that road too. You know, I'm guilty of myself of shortcuts. The other day, I got over to a bank off Little Road, and I realized that I was going to have to sit through 20 red lights on Little Road to get to my home in Hudson. So, you know, I cut through River Crossing, up Starkey Boulevard, out Moon Lake Road, and I know that's what people are going to do. They're going to cut through a project like this. So,
well, again, I can have at least
that needs to get looked at.
I don't disagree, except for the fact that I do have to follow how the code's administered on a day-to-day basis, and that's not anything that other projects are doing.
I don't think you've done anything wrong.
Right.
I understand that in the
It would be, I think what
world,
Mr. Moody, I think your point might be, if we're able to, it'd be nice if we could go back and do a little bit of supplemental analysis and make sure that we're not creating an issue if the other project were to be approved.
likewise to the other applicant.
Right. I mean, and again, and I think most of the planning commissioners are aware, in the post-concurrency era, I've not been even tracking this other project because it's off-site for me, and I would not be paying for site access improvements at their intersections. And so it's, you know.
I don't know what the answer to this is. I think it's probably a better question for staff, and I realize you may not be tracking it, but clearly the neighbors are.
I don't know, it's Terry, I
tracking it.
don't know if he has traffic folks here, but Ali's here can answer from our perspective. It's just
Before you sit down, Clark.
Us and Khalil would like to speak to the matter.
Okay,
Yes, good afternoon. This is Asin. Mr. Moody, point well taken. You're absolutely right. But when we do these types of studies, we're looking at the mainline capacities of roadways. And they're not a small project, so they don't get built out in a year or two. They have a build out year that's many years out. So when they look at their build out, they consider their build out traffic. And in that, they account for a growth in the background that happens, which we've seen in the past that sort of account for the growth that will happen in the background. So when they do their analysis, they're looking at existing, they're looking at future background, and then they look at future background with their project traffic. And then they evaluate the roadway network and identify where, if any, there are any failures on those mainline segments. So when you do the timing and phasing analysis, which these MPUDs are doing, they're focused more on the mainline through capacities of these collector arterial roadways. They're not specifically looking for a left turn, right turn failure that is occurring. We can get into the intersection analyses where they can show failures at the intersections, which might be off-site. We do look at what point in time of their development stage does that failure occur that translates back to the development size that they're at. So if they're 1,000 units, at 500 or 600, we'll start seeing a failure at a certain point in time. And they identify what that failure may be. So we can then program for those improvements, whether we use tax dollars or mobility fees, so on and so forth. So, but to specifically answer your question, whether we account for a roadway that these guys are showing in their analysis, we may not have looked at, and we can always go back and look at it again. And if some change needs to be made, we can address it.
Essen, is there additional analyses that happen with each site plan? What I'm getting, so each time they do a site plan, they might be asked, okay, now there is a new intersection to the east and that needs to be studied before we can approve. I see Ali shaking your head no.
So at each site plan, we do have an access management type of a study, which specifically looks at that project's access, cuts, locations where their traffic is coming in and out. We at times do have them include any adjacent or immediate intersections that they have an immediate and direct impact on it. So access management studies can get into that if we want to, but mostly it is looking at the project's own driveway access locations and evaluating what improvements are needed.
Okay. Can I ask Essen a question that may get to your issue? Essen, when you're looking at the background traffic growth rates, are you considering the amount of growth that's occurring in the area, or are you using a standard percentage throughout the whole county?
We're generally using a standard percentage, which is minimum of 2%. Sometimes we have used a higher percentage based on the growth that we have seen in the AADT volumes, annual average daily traffic that occurs on these roadways. But at times we do get into the model volumes where Ali can maybe express whether they use the model in this case or not. I did not directly review this analysis, but I can definitely go back and look at it. But we are generally looking at a 2% minimum growth rate around the county. And we've seen over the years that 2% may seem to be a small number, but it is a very significant number when you look at annual average daily traffics on these roadways to be 20, 30, 40,000 vehicles per day. 2% is a large amount when you take it out 10, 15, 20 years.
So knowing that the project is coming in, do you think the 2% growth rate is reasonable?
We have experienced in the past that it has been a reasonable number to use, but we have used other numbers as well.
Essen, you said that 2% significant at roads that have 40,000 cars a day. I don't know, does Denton Avenue or does Denton Avenue have that kind of volume?
I don't have the traffic study in front of you, Mr. Moody. I don't know, my colleague Stacy, she is here also. She may have the report, or if Ali has it handy, he can.
This is Ali Atefi. I'm with Links and Associates. I've been sworn. 5023 West Laurel Drive, Tampa, Florida, 33607. Just a quick background on the growth rates. I was with the county for many years. So when we switched from concurrency to the mobility fee and timing and phasing, there was a big discussion about what do we do about growth in the surrounding area when you do these type of studies. The county, through the Development Review Committee, which was the administrator and all the assistants, they all decided that they don't want to spend time to track all the trips from surrounding projects and to do this type of analysis. The decision was to use a standard growth rate. Now, I do agree with you that that growth rate can be it can differ from road to road. A road like US 19, a growth rate of 2% is huge, but on Denton, 2% may not be huge. I don't know. So it's a guessing game. You just use your logic to determine these growth rates. I can tell you that based on the numbers I'm seeing, even if you use a growth rate of 10%, let's say, on Denton, you're still not going to be over the capacity, because a two-lane capacity, you're looking at about 16, 17,000 cars a day. So even if you use a growth rate of that magnitude, you're still not going to exceed the capacity of that two-lane road. The turn lanes, we're already doing the turn lanes, so it doesn't matter. So overall, I would say, I mean, we can revise the analysis, spend the time to do it, but I can tell you that it's not going to change the result of what we found out here.
Are you saying capacity for the main line roadway? My particular issue goes to an intersection that's going to exist and hasn't been evaluated.
Yeah, at the end of the day, when you look at that intersection as well, it's the main line that it play a role into how much green time it gets and determines the capacity of that road.
Well, you're insinuating it may need a signal. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, and Mr. Moody, this was one of the big changes when we went to timing and phasing from concurrency. We don't analyze, pay prop shares for, or contribute to off-site intersection improvements anymore. None of our projects, these huge developments.
I'm not suggesting that it was your obligation to. I'm kind of asking the staff. I understand when concurrency went away and you didn't have that obligation, you don't have that obligation today. And like I said right from the outset, I don't think you've done anything wrong. I think it's a problem that's inherent in the system, and I'm hoping that the staff can figure this out so that we can try to stave off problems as we go forward.
And if that's your point, it's well taken. The only thing I would say is the other site, whatever those site access improvements are, and I was just chatting with Barbara on the side, and she's going to do her own work, but they're obviously well aware of whatever site access improvements or signalization requirements or whatever they are from their own access management study. And, you know, what we determined when we went away from concurrency was that the party that's adjacent to the intersection that's at issue is in the best condition with the county to determine what those improvements are. So that's why we operate the way we do now. We don't even generally, we're looking at capacity improvements, and we don't look at intersection improvements. If the staff wants to consider that stuff, they're welcome to do so. But the party that they'd be extracting those improvements from on a general basis would be the developers that are adjacent to it. If I'm saying that wrong, David can correct me, but I think that's the way we do things.
I think that's generally accurate.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hobby, it reads in here that you're going to build approximately 804 residential dwellings.
Right.
And associated infrastructure. Could you elaborate on the infrastructure with grocery stores, gas stations, liquor barns, anything along that line?
Nothing along that line. In this case, it's a residential, I know, it's a residential only community. I think staff might have been referring to, or our narrative might have been referring to, our roadway infrastructure and utility infrastructure and retention ponds and things like that.
So no,
Residential only community. No bars, no liquor stores, no heavy industrial.
The grocery store, I mean, it was alluded to the fact that there's the closest one is Walmart or something along that line.
What I'm learning here, we might be able to use the one on Barbara's adjacent property.
Okay, we set you up for that one, didn't we? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I hope so, because it's a long way from there to a grocery
half
store.
my, oh, that's right, we'll have to
It's
beat it
actually
down the
quicker to go
road.
to Spring Hill.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hobby. I don't think anybody addressed, I don't know if you need to address it or staff needs to address it, why we're hearing this on the east side of the county as opposed to the west side of the county.
You know, to be honest with you, I can't remember why. Was this one that was running late? Yeah, I think there was might have been an advertising date that staff missed internally, and it got pushed a month. Originally, it was going to be on the other side. That's what happened.
Clark, one question very quickly. So for the single-family detached lots, are you proposing 40-footers for 100%?
We have a combination of 40s and 50s, and we're meeting the new county standards on that.
Okay. So are your 40-footers going to be more than 50%?
No, they're going to be at or less. I think right now they're significantly less.
Okay. So you're not proposing any rear-loaded lots or anything?
No, and again, we'll meet all the landscaping and architectural requirements that the board's now requiring.
Okay. How about from the perspective of the multifamily? Is that going to go down in, what is it, phase?
Well, I don't want to be misleading. We call it multifamily, and that's really because it's going to be one owner, maybe rental units if we have them. It's the current plan, and it's not binding, but the current plan would show that those units would be in that portion B that's near the southeast corner, near the unplatted subdivision over there. And I think that's why our neighbor wanted the fencing over there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious why that wouldn't be up further towards the north side of the project. Kind of from a density perspective, it looks like those lots over there, acre plus.
They are, and I'll try to be kind. I mean, that subdivision is in major need of repair.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Any comments?
I just want to clarify the location of the hearing. It's been policy that when there is no opposition to an item, that it can be heard on either side of the county, and staff had not heard from anybody in the neighborhood until just recently. So it had been scheduled a while ago, and we didn't have any opposition at that time.
Okay. Patty, is there anybody on the web? No. All right. So if there are no more questions.
I'll make a motion that we approve P10.
Okay.
I think this is P9.
P9? Yeah. That's what you meant, right, Pete?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Do I have a second?
I'll second. That's with the revised conditions, right?
Yes. Right, Pete?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries. Okay, okay. Is that it? Okay, okay. Chris? adjourn?
Motion to. Can I say something?
Yes, sir. Yes, you
Before we
certainly may.
move to adjourn?
Yeah.
I'm bothered a little bit by the past case that we just heard being heard on this side, and I had originally planned to pull this and voluntarily ask the applicant to continue it until the people on the west side didn't have to travel to Dade City to hear this, and I hope that in the future we can try to avoid these things. The other thing that I've noticed, this is my third meeting here, and that is that the consent agenda has changed a lot since I last occupied this seat, and I'm frankly shocked that I see large-scale comprehensive plan amendments, 3,000-acre projects, 800 home subdivisions, 1,600 home subdivisions, all slide through on the consent agenda. In my mind, the consent agenda is for Mrs. Jones's 5-foot variance for a shed, not for us just to rubber stamp 1,000 homes here, 1,000 homes there. And I'd like to see to make sure that that needs to change, because I'm just going to sit up here and pull them off, and we're going to hear them.
Okay, anybody else?
Just a quick question with David. Is there anything in the code that does require for them to be heard on the east or west side?
No, it's not a code requirement. It has been, Tammy has stated it correctly. Well, the old historic policy, I'll call it the John Gallagher policy, and maybe when Mr. Moody was last year, was that anything on the east side of the county had to be heard on the east side. Anything on the west side of the county had to be heard on the west side. There was no deviation from that. The more current county administrator relaxed that policy and said what the policy is basically what Tammy said, which is that if there was no opposition to the item, that it could be heard on either side of the county. Now, the difficult issue is today's application was difficult because Tammy's saying she didn't think there was any opposition and then discovered there was opposition. Not sure how that's occurring when the notices are going out, you know, quite a bit in advance, and aren't there neighborhood meetings on some of these too? I mean, was there a neighborhood meeting on this last one?
So, Brad Tippett, Planning Development, to go into a little bit about what you were saying as to the reason why that change was made, it was due to the volume of submittals and delays, and the projects were not wanting to wait an entire month until something is heard back on a particular side of the county, and a directive was essentially given to us to do the first available hearing after we're ready to go, unless there is some form of opposition there, and that was done to try and improve the processing time due to the volume of stuff that's happening in the county right now. To answer your question, I'm not sure Tammy can possibly speak to that.
So Tammy, I guess I'd like to know why we're...
Generally, if we hear about opposition within a short time of notice, we may be able to do something, but if we don't know about it, if we hear about it a few days before or a week before, then we're not able to reasonably change that. We can bring it up, we can pull it.
But I guess my question is, I thought that was the whole point of the neighborhood meeting.
When they're required, for projects they're actually required.
So this one was not required to do a neighborhood meeting?
I do not believe it was. Tammy, can you confirm
This one
that?
is not within the 4 rural areas, so a neighborhood meeting is not required per the land development code.
So you're telling me that, so a notice goes out 15 days before the hearing or whatever it was, and we're just finding out two days before that there's opposition? Is that what's happening?
My understanding, and Patty can correct me if I'm mistaken, the first time we heard that there was opposition was yesterday when Ms. Patty received phone calls.
So I don't know that I have a good solution to that. I mean, we could change the code to require notice earlier. We could, you know, go back to the old rule where everything is on either side of the county, you know, no matter what, but there's...
We also had the virtual option, which changed that a little bit because people could attend virtually and not make the drive.
That's a good point.
That was one of the key things we're trying to, you know.
Because if somebody was in Newport Richey and really wanted to speak on this item, they could do it from the comfort of their home.
Right, we have no registrations whatever for this meeting.
Yeah, and one other thing that I just remembered is because of the way the July hearing, it would have caused a exponential delay. It would have been a 2-month delay with hearings had we really, because of the way the deadlines and timings of the hearings occur.
Brad, how are comp plan amendments noticed?
This is Terry Pitos for the Planning and Development Department. Comp plan amendments are noticed in the newspaper per state statute requirements at this time. But we have identified an update that needs to be made to our land development code to align the notification requirements with and make them similar to MPUD notification requirements.
And how far a perimeter around the MPUD is the notification requirement?
So the notification requirement is if the land use is Res 1 or lower, so in other words, AG, AGR, or Res 1, the notification requirement is 1,000 feet. If it's Res 3 or higher, so Res 3, Res 6, Res 9, so on and so forth, then the notification requirement is 500 feet.
Why is the notification requirement less if the development's more intense?
Well, so so if you look at the logic, it's because the AG, AGR, those are larger pieces of property. So you'll pick up more people if you do the 1,000 feet. So typically those properties, AG, AGR, are 10 acres, 5 acres, 20 acres, 40 acres. That's why the notice for AG, AGR, for example, or Res 1 is 1,000 feet.
The other thing I would add to that's why staff requires the posting of signs, because signs are supposed to be the notice to anybody who lives beyond those radiuses. And usually they require the signs to be on a major thoroughfare so that anybody driving by the property would see the sign and know there's an action occurring.
The only question I have about the signs is, one, when it rains, they tend to smear. Number two is some of the signs in my area, they tend to be hidden in the bushes. And talk about my area, which is the Wesley Chapel area, I like to, you know, we're speaking kind of an east-west situation here. If I consider the Wesley Chapel area and part of Land O'Lakes area too, like some folks in the audience are here, it's easier for us to drive over here to this side of the county. You know, it's a 40-minute drive as opposed to going to the west side of the county, which is probably about an hour and 10, 15 minutes. It used to be a 40-minute drive, but this year, somehow it's turned out to be much longer. So I would say not only look at the distance, but look at the driving time too. I can understand how the folks that live in the Spring Hill area took them a considerable amount of time to get here. So that's the, you know, we could talk about east and west, but there is a large section of the county that's in the center. So I would not only consider.
But I think that was, Brad raised a very good point though, which is that we changed our rules so that anybody can attend by WebEx now.
That's true, and I have no problem with that.
You could live on Venus. And
well, I'm not sure about that.
Do they have internet there?
Any place that has access to internet could attend our meetings now.
I'm not sure how the oxygen is on Venus, but I think that the...
Elon's working on that.
Hey, don't be messing with my friend. Yeah, WebEx is the way to go. I know in my community, I was against the Zoom process, but it works. The only problem is sometimes not everybody has access to it. So, but it's the future. It's definitely the future.
But I mean, when our board agreed to make the board meetings and the planning commission meeting hearings semi-virtual,
yeah,
that was one of the reasons. We have people that work during this time, they can't get off work to attend, they live, 40 miles away. Nobody's forced to physically attend our meetings anymore.
I understand, and I agree with you 100%. You can pull up an iPhone and pull up the meetings too, so accessibility is fantastic. Sometimes, though, it's nice to come to the meeting and see the interaction, not only the verbals, but sometimes the body language. But that's enough said on my part. I'm done.
All right. Any other comments? I think you wanted to bring up something, didn't you, Brad, before we...
Oh, I was just going to respond to that we were talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anything, Terry? Nothing? Good. Okay. I think we have a motion and a second. Further discussion of the motion to adjourn? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Very good.
Bye, Denise.
Bye, Denise.
Pasco County waterways and wildlife depend on you to keep them healthy. Excess fertilizer, grass clippings, trash, oils, and pet waste wash into gutters and storm drains when it rains. Stormwater carries these pollutants directly into our lakes and rivers, creating an unhealthy environment for fish, waterfowl, and other aquatic animals. Storm drains are meant for clean rainwater. Most other discharges are illegal. If you suspect an illicit discharge, please contact Pasco County Department of Public Works at 727-834-3611.